Hi, my name is David D'Onofrio. I am the CEO of White Gold Corp, also a co-founder along with PowerOne Capital Group and Shawn Ryan. White Gold has a very unique property package in the Yukon and the Klondike district. This was the epicenter of the infamous gold rush, which started into the 1800s and is ongoing today, where there's been over 20 million ounces of placer gold mined from the creeks, but no real modern day exploration until about 15 years ago, when our partner and co-founder Shawn Ryan went there with a vision to find the source of some of this gold and other hard rock deposits. He has been incredibly successful to date, making several very large gold discoveries, which has totaled millions and millions of ounces to date. One of those is within White Gold. It's now 3 million ounces and one of the highest grade open pitable resources in all of Canada and the highest grade in the Yukon. But what we really are excited about is not only the opportunity to grow that deposit, but we believe we own an entire camp. So it's an opportunity to be invested in a camp, so similar to the early days of owning a big position in Val d'Or or the Abitibi or something like that. We've been very fortunate to attract Agnico Eagle as our largest shareholder and are very actively exploring this region, which has come into the focus of the global mine exploration community in the last several years, with other majors moving into the region for similar reasons. We believe it's a very untapped and highly prospective area of Canada.
Okay, well, look, Dave, love to meet you. Thanks for that introduction. You've not been on the platform before, and it'd be great to sort of understand, a bit about you, how this deal kind of came together. I get that Shawn Ryan's involvement, but maybe how you structured that. So what's the setup?
So the company was founded in 2016, and this was right around the time when the Coffee deposit, which is owned by another junior exploration company called Kaminak Resources, was acquired by Gold Corp for $520 million. A lot of people remember that. It was pretty topical at the time. Now, it was Shawn and his team that made that exploration and was able to delineate a very large resource. In utilizing the technology or the protocols that Shawn developed, which are very unique and intricate and really helped crack the code for this area, which surprisingly had otherwise not been really explored, as he took that same protocol and basically just carpet bombed the entire district over an area over 110 kilometers north to south, starting from Dawson down to this Coffee project, and about 50 or 60 kilometers east and west. And from that area, he cherry-picked what he thought were the best of the best and the most prospective opportunities, and assembled those into a package when he came to visit us at PowerOne to see if we'd be interested in being his partner in that venture. Now, PowerOne, we're a merchant bank based in Toronto. We've been around for a little over 20 years now, and we are we view ourselves as strategic capital partners to entrepreneurs. We don't only invest in mining, but mining exploration and development's really been our focus over the last 20 years, and we're fortunate to be involved with some great and high-profile discoveries over the years, starting with the Rillian resources back in the early days and sold them to a number of the different majors. So we have great relationships. We'd like to bring that to the table in addition to our capital, in addition to relationship within the capital markets, and basically set the platform for these companies to be able to leverage these other parties to advance their success if they're able to, demonstrate prospectivity with the exploration programs. And when Shawn brought us this opportunity, we were extremely enthused. For us, we've developed a bit of a protocol over the years where we, that helps us refine our investments. And this one really checked all the boxes. Most importantly was jurisdiction. Jurisdiction's always been important for us. In this day and age, I think you can argue it's never been more important. The other thing it highlighted was an outsized potential return or price. We really do view this as one of the last great Canadian frontiers with tremendous prospectivity that has not been explored. So if we were right, this would be akin to being able to go back in time and own a land package as large as this, which is 300,000 hectares in Timmins or Val d'Or or something like that. So that was pretty unique. And with that type of uniqueness, we thought this would have interest amongst some of the major mining companies that we're involved with. And we brought the opportunity to several of them. They were all extremely enthused, and we selected Agnico Eagle to be our partner. They came in as a 19% shareholder at that time and have stayed as a 19% shareholder throughout. Obviously, they are so strong in building mines in Northern Canada. That was a big part of the reason we chose them. The other reason was they really offered us the opportunity to leverage their technical expertise. So for a junior company starting out to have one of the biggest and best mining companies in Canada as your partner and have access to their sophisticated group of professionals, that was the perfect situation for us. And we, jumped in bed with Shawn, and now as a group, we probably own 20% of the company. Agnico owns just under 20%. Our close network probably owns about another 15 or 20%. And we've got to work. We've been extremely successful. We delineated this great deposit, which I think has tremendous upside. We've continued to build out our team. We actually were just fortunate enough to hire Dylan Langille. He was part of the discovery team at Great Bear Resources, which I'm sure everyone's aware of. He spent 7 years in Red Lake, 5 with Great Bear, 2 with Kinross. And now that that's headed towards production, he's looking for his next big opportunity and chose us. And in addition to just being a great mind to add to our team, he's identified various opportunities that we actually had not identified previously, and we've actually oriented our exploration program on the basis of that. And I think that's really caught a lot of attention. And this is all happening at a time where the world is starting to appreciate that commodities are very important, and there have not been enough exploration done. And we think we're sitting in a really strong position here with what we know we have, the potential for that, in terms, and also this blue sky prospectivity within the balance of our package for gold, and also some critical minerals which we've identified as well.
A lot going on there, and also being done in the backdrop, obviously gold price, ripping, and exploration companies maybe starting to be able to get access to capital to do the things that they want. Because I think up until the middle of this year, I think you'd argue that perhaps you weren't getting the love that you would have expected. So what do you put that down to? It's not just gold price. Gold price has been on tear for the last 2 years. So was it the appointments, or was it the kind of resource growth that you put out earlier, a few months ago now, that kind of caught people's attention?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of all of the above. And I think the other thing is just the timing of the gold cycle. I recall talking to Ari Sussman of Collective Mining, he's another partner of PowerOne. And when the gold price started to move, we said, Dave, it's probably going to take about 18 months for the juniors to start seeing some of the interest, right? The capital is going to first go to the biggest and the most de-risked, like the Agnicos and the majors, and then the mid-tiers, then the developers, then these, extremely large new discoveries like a Collective or a Snowline, which is also the Yukon. So part of that timing, it was just timing. However, I think the Yukon was a bit delayed in that cycle timing because of some of the issues that had happened in the last year, notably Victoria Gold. But it wasn't until sort of this summer when the reports came up from the government would happen. I think a lot of people got more comfort, which coincidentally happened at the same time that Snowline was announcing, the size and the economics around their project. And it's nothing like a 9 million ounce discovery to remind people how great the prospectivity of an area is. So I think it was a bit of that, which helped set the context. So, where the light bulb really went off for me was at Beaver Creek this year, where yes, we're in an environment where people are more interested in precious metals because of the gold price. So that was great. But the Yukon has really come back on vogue, and it's viewed by many, I was speaking to some of the best and brightest minds out there, that they do view the Yukon to be one of the last great frontiers of Canada, or in Canada. And you look, it's the same set of rocks that go from Alaska through the Yukon down into BC. Both Alaska and BC have had, tremendous productivity in their exploration and mine development, and the Yukon is much less. But if you overlay the investment and exploration dollars on top of that, it's almost a 1-to-1 correlation. So that really speaks volumes to the fact that it's not that the rocks have changed, the work hasn't been done. However, in the last several years, more work has been done. We've seen more prospectivity. Companies like Sitka and Banyan, they've all continued to grow. And then we have a coffee project, which has been another great discovery. So I think the awareness has come back. And then from our perspective as White Gold, what's also helped is, one, this updated resource. Now 3 million ounces is quite substantial. But in particular, I think what people are starting to realize, and what I believe really sets this company apart from many others, is the grade. So at 1.4 grams per ton overall, that's really good for an open pit. It's highest grades in the Yukon. But within that, and it was Dylan, who just joined us recently, what he identified is that there's an ultra high grade core within that project. There's 1.1 million ounces at about 3 grams. And within that, there's 700,000 ounces at 5 grams. and that remains open for expansion. And he said, this is where we should be focusing. This is where you're going to get the best return for your investment. And I think that idea, and once people started to realize that, they said, yeah, you know what, this is a very special, unique opportunity. And as they spend more time, they will get further, impressed by the size of the land package, the type of work we've done, the other discoveries we made in the province or in the portfolio. And, the last thing, for better or worse, is that we'd still been trading at a pretty significant discount to the peer group, partly because I don't think as a company we've had the opportunity to maybe tell the story, or we haven't taken advantage of these opportunities, and we've really identified that as an area for improvement, and now starting to do more outreach similar to opportunities like this to help get the word out there. So as the awareness build, the interest build, and here we are today.
Yeah, obviously there's a lot of good things happening in the Yukon. I think people kind of got over the Victoria Gold situation for sure. Just in terms of the technical report which you put out recently, can you just talk through maybe some of the reinterpretations that you made in there, with Golden Saddle and ARC, etc. Kind of, because you talk about 44% increase indicated, right?
Yeah, that's right. So the majority of the resource is in the indicated, and that's mostly, there's 4 separate pits. The bulk of it is in this Golden Saddle. That's this main zone, which has this ultra high grade component that I just touched on. And where we realized there to be some additional opportunity was in a couple places. So right now, the way before the update, the way the resources model was one main zone, it dips at about 55 degrees. What some of our team has highlighted is that there's 2 additional parallel zones. One a hanging wall, which is on towards the surface, and the other one is a footwall towards beneath it. Now it's all very shallow. It's all coming to surface, and that entire resource is sitting within a pit. The majority of the work on this main part of the deposit was done historically by a company called Underworld Resources, which Kinross acquired. This was a Shawn Ryan project, discovery Kinross acquired, and then we acquired into White Gold. So no one had really looked at this project since the first couple of years of its discovery, because the original discovery, Kinross acquired it within 18 months from the original discovery. And that team was then gone. Kinross came in. They focused most of their work on some other properties. And it wasn't really until Dylan who came back to look at it. And he said, guys, there's a lot of holes I see in your modeling that don't really make sense based on the drilling that's been done. So part of that was to go back and relog, reanalyze, rebuild the wireframes, which allowed for greater connectivity. We did adjust the cutoff grade slightly down to 0.3, which brings in a lot more resource into it. So there had always been this 10 million tons of area for additional opportunity, which had sort of sat as this like sidecar to our deposit. And it kind of was always something I wanted the team to look at. They never really had the time, but it was a part of that got pulled into the resource. So it was mainly a structural reinterpretation. But the other thing that led to, which is really interesting, and this is part of our program for this year and going forward, because as I mentioned, it just didn't sit well with Dylan that the wireframes were so patchy considering the amount of drilling that was done. And what he realized that there was a lot of drilling that was never assayed. So within that whole Golden Saddle, which is only 60,000 meters of total, which is not a ton. Like if you look at our neighbor, the Coffee deposit, 30 kilometers away, they have a resource of 3.8 million ounces with 600,000 meters of drilling. So I think that speaks to the prospectivity, but 7,000 meters was never assayed. So that's 12% of the total drilling. So we see that there's continuity. We were able to extend it within the updated wireframes, but we believe that there will be continued opportunity, which is great for 2 reasons. Number one, it adds more gold. But number 2, this is gold that's sitting right at the top of the pit. And that's going to be the ultimate driver of economics, I think, going forward.
So, okay, so you've done a few things there. You kind of reduced the cutoff. Did you say 0.2 or 0.3?
0.3.
0.3, okay. So obviously that, and you're talking about the wireframes there, maybe changing your understanding of the mineral continuity, as it were. So at what point do you get more certainty on whether that'll translate into new answers for the next resource update? And, so when are you targeting being able to announce something on that?
So this work went into the recent resource update, which took us from 2.3 million ounces to 3 million ounces. So that update is baked in. our next update will be based on this year's drilling to some extent, where again, we had a modest program. Now, in the last several years, we've continued to advance the projects with modest programs. A lot of juniors just sort of put their hands up and said, we're in a terrible market. What's the point of taking that dilution? We knew we had a great project on our hands. We wanted to continue to advance it. So as the market comes back, we'd have a really good story to tell. But where I think we're really going to move the needle is sort of in the next 12 months, where we're going to be able to perform a drill program that's orders of magnitude larger than what we've done. We were fortunate. We've just closed a $23 million financing. So we're looking at probably a 25,000 meter drill program coming next year versus, we've been doing 3,000 type meter programs. And what we've done strategically prior to Dylan is just, we know we have this good resource here. As a junior with a modest budget, how can we continue to demonstrate the upside as opposed to just, stepping out 15 meters or whatever it was. So what we did is we looked to try and discover new zones of mineralization within about a 10-kilometer proximity. And we were extremely effective in doing that. So we've identified a dozen different targets. We've gone and drilled 3 or 4 of them so far and been able to publish small resources on each of those with the theory that as we have more capital at some point in time in the future, we'd be able to go back and, double or triple or bulk them up or in some capacity. So it wasn't until Dylan came and said, guys, you have this crazy high-grade core. Let's continue to grow that because that's like extreme. That's going to be extremely economic. So going forward next year, we're going to actually be able to put this big program to extend this high-grade zone, look for new zones of mineralization, and go back to these other new discoveries we made nearby.
And look, there's a kind of sort of, I guess, a movement in the space at the moment to sort of show the ability to deliver near-term revenue in a market like this. Why wouldn't you? The kind of rules change slightly. How much work have you done in terms of pit shell design and even, I guess, with this high-grade stuff, block model optimization?
Yeah, it's a good point. And we were chatting with an Australian group 4 years ago, and they looked at our model and it came back and they said, what's your plan? So we're going to keep drilling here and drilling there. And say, you Canadians make us laugh. All you guys like to do is drill for the sake of drilling and growing. You have 1,000,001 ounces at 3 grams. That's a mine. You should start mining that today. That is going to be extremely economic. And then you'll use that, to pay. And these mines don't just stop, right? You'll be able to, and they were right. So had we done that, we'd be out of a mine today. And, where would we be? Multiples of value where we are now. So, but to answer your question specifically, we'd done a scoping studies a couple of years ago, and the results were like extremely robust. And I was actually pleasantly, it came back stronger than I expected. I didn't really understand why until now that we've done the more work. When you have 700,000 ounces at 5 grams of sitting at the top of your pit, that's going to, pay for some quick payback and a high return. So we've now accelerated the process, and we're in the process now to publish a preliminary economics assessment. That will be targeted for release sometime in the first half of next year. And within that process, what these engineers have identified is the opportunity to maybe have a smaller starter pit focusing on this high-grade core right at the surface for exactly that reason, to really draw forward the time of first production. So it's in the process, and it's identified as, let's try to get producing as soon as possible based on where we are in this.
Right. Okay. And obviously, you've identified some high grade core in there as well. I mean, how deep is that? What are we talking about?
So the entire pit right now goes to about 450 meters, but the ore body, continues through there. We just have not drilled any further than that, and the high grade has allowed us to bring the pit that deep.
Okay, fine. And so that could be like the starter pit. Okay. Understood. In terms of prioritizing upgrades to further upgrades and further indicated, how do you kind of allocate the budget going forward with that? I know you want to do some drilling, and I love the fact these Australians kind of called it like it is, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But and we've seen a few companies actually follow that same model and to some success in Canada. But with a bunch of money, you've got lots of optionality. How do you prioritize it?
Yeah. So and the other thing that's really nice for us is the timing. Yeah, it would have been great to start it then, but then we would have been the first people. So our neighbors, this coffee project, which was originally Kaminak and Gold Corp, got swallowed up with Newmont. Now Newmont went and got it permitted, and they drilled this other many, many meters. Now, nobody in the planet heard about it because it's within Newmont. It wasn't big enough to be announceable. Now that it's in this a new vehicle called Fuerte, where Agnico came in as a partner, Pierre Lassonde came in as a partner to develop it, it's great for us because they've sort of been the trailblazer and gone through that process. Now, in our area of the Yukon, which is Dawson to south, basically the Klondike's the most recognizable way to refer to it. The First Nations in this area have also been very supportive. It's primarily within the Trondic-Witchin's traditional territory, and they've been part of the fabric of this placer mining community, which has been ongoing for 100 years. So it's nice to see as an investor that you're operating in a place where things actually happen. And the fact that our next door neighbor is now permitted, and the fact that Agnico and Pierre Lassonde have just invested in it, I think that should speak volumes in terms of the ability to actually be able to build a mine, right? You can have the best deposit in the world. If you can't mine it, then it's all moot, isn't it?
I forgot to ask earlier, with regards to the met work, have you done some met work?
So the majority, like this ultra high grade stuff, the metallurgy is phenomenal. It's like 92% type recoveries. It's amazing. There's 4 other smaller zones. Less met work has been done on that, and I think historically what has happened is the focus had all gone to this ultra high grade zone because they figured that would be the biggest payback, but they've ignored everything around it. So part of what we're doing is looking at everything around it. Right next to it is a small deposit called the Arc. It's only 300,000 ounces, but it's an enormous footprint. It's about 1.5 kilometers long. It's in a bit of an arc shape, hence the name. That's only been drilled to 100 meters. Now, when Dylan first started and he was looking through all the reports and trying to figure out, where we should focus the drilling this year, that was the first thing he came. He said, "Oh my God, Dave, this thing's 1.5 kilometers. It's wide open. I can bulk this thing up like crazy." I said, "You probably can, but we need to do a little bit more met work there," because that initial met work was not as strong as the Golden Saddle. So we're doing that now. If that checks, okay, let me put it this way. When we were doing our scoping study, it wasn't a matter of like, this doesn't work. It was a matter of, based on the studies which were done 12 years ago and not refined, they said there's a lot of opportunity to improve this. But let's just take the worst case scenario. If we use these old studies, at $1,800 gold, you're breaking even. That was what we used for our analysis. So in my mind, I'm thrilled because I knew the Golden Saddle was extremely robust at $1,800 gold. So everything on top of that is just going to be gravy. If we did no extra work, the Arc would work at $1,800 gold or north of that price. But our goal is to now, as part of the process, part of the drilling this year, we did more samples to further improve that. That is, extremely low-hanging fruit in terms of being able to grow that. And then the other 2 small deposits, one of them looks identical to the Golden Saddle, and one of them is sort of somewhere between. And we haven't done that met work yet. That's part of our PA, which we're doing now.
Okay, you're doing the PA now. So this is the interesting thing. You've had a few kind of, I guess, not capital, I hate using that word, but you've had a few announcements which kind of got the market going again. In terms of hires, in terms of the report, in terms of the grade, etc. But how do you plan the PA, which will be the next sort of, I guess, meaningful announcement over and above the ongoing drilling that you're doing? What do you think is important to focus on in terms of things like reclassifying underground extensions or the higher grade domains within these open pits, and ultimately, wrapping some economics around the way forward?
So in terms of what's coming forward in the next sort of, call it 6 months, in terms of catalysts, there's going to be basically all of our exploration results. We've only just put out our first press release last week where we were extremely successful. So the target of that hole was to try to intersect all 3 zones, the hanging wall, the main zone, and the footwall. And Dylan really likes this new footwall because that was identified historically. Because the previous operator, they just stopped at the high-grade zone, but 2 holes went through, and 300 meters apart, they hit this footwall zone, which had plus 4 gram type material over really good mineable width. So he said, okay, I want to tag that because if you have another plus 4 gram material ore zone underneath your main zone, that's going to be exceptional value creation. So the first hole hit all 3 zones, which was great. So that there was more high grade in the footwall, the hanging wall. We identified it was there, but what really, shocked us and caught us by surprise was the intercept we had through the main zone. And it was an infill hole, but it was sort of 60 odd meters away from any other of the nearest holes. And it had the highest grades ever encountered to date. It drilled 50 meters at 6.9 grams. So that really just continued to demonstrate to us that this ultra high grade zone, internal zone was expanding. So I think your question was, how do we, where do we prioritize? That where Dylan really wants to drill is the down dip extension of that main zone, because he thinks that's going to continue. And there's every reason to believe so based on the geophysical work we've done. That'll be part of it. But that type of drilling will also be complemented by doing more work on this footwall zone, just, sub-parallel to the main zone. But there really are these other, and I kind of like this, I come from a finance background, it's risk reward. These other smaller deposits we have, they're small only because they've only been drilled very limited fashion. So it's not like they were drilled and they were small. I believe that they're wide open for expansion. I mean, you see the best holes are right on the edge of the deposit. There's nothing, it's just the time wasn't there, the budget wasn't there for whatever reason. So I think that's high probability type exploration. You're drilling in and around something that's there with a real opportunity to really increase the volumes with a budget that's going to allow you to do that. So now you're not going in with a rifle or an arrow. You're looking at more. I use the word shotgun, but not in an sort of sophisticated way. You can put now 7 holes, whereas in the past you'd have to choose one, and that's not how mines are found, right? Like the Golden Saddle, when they first are found, it was on hole number 80 or whatever it is, and that's typically the way it works. And we have these other untested targets. So it's almost like you have 3 avenues for significant resource growth, which is ultra exciting. And again, that's part of the story. So you're asking about what's going to turn the needle going forward. It's the additional results from this year's program, I think. It's the plan and people are going to be able to see a pathway to significant increases beyond 3 million ounces. Like I think this 4 or 5 million ounces is very reasonable. And to the extent that's successful, Dylan, as he explains to me, that these orogenic type deposits, there's every reason to believe they're going to continue to grow. So you have now several deposits all close to each other. Is there a feeder system? Do these things all connect at depth? That's, the complete blue sky. And then that's how you go from 5 to 7 or 10 million ounces. We're not there yet, but as we can sort of show success in that first stage, I think that's going to paint the pathway for that. So that's all within our flagship project. And then in addition to that, we're going to continue working and following up on some of these other discoveries we made. And with a company like this is why it's a nice platform. I'm talking a lot, I apologize, but there's just so much, 300,000 hectares. Just to put that into context, most juniors will maybe have 20,000 hectares, 10, right? We've been referred to as a super junior. And I do believe this could be 5 or 6 type companies. It's just, we're fortunate that Shawn was able to get there first and really acquire it all. So on these other projects, there are bona fide new discoveries where we just haven't had the chance to go back to. Now we do. One example is our property called the Betty. That is contiguous to the coffee project, which Fuerte now owns. That is going into production. As part of that production, actually, there's a road, which I want to talk about in a little bit. It's also contiguous to Western Copper's casino project. So now you have a 3 to 5 million ounce deposit on one side, a 20 million ounce, big copper gold pellet with 14 billion pounds of copper. Right on that same fault system, we've had 3 discovery holes, 20 meters of 5 grams, 50 meters of 3.5 grams, 15 meters of 3 grams. And we had to leave it. Well, now we'll go back. And, I think that's going to drive a lot of excitement. And the other thing is, as I mentioned, it would be very improbable to have a porphyry, you're just down in South America, that's 14 billion pounds of copper and 20 million ounces of gold and have nothing else around it, right? These porphyries happen in clusters. We see it in collectives. So we have other targets that are very large porphyry signatures, big targets, 3 kilometers by multi-kilometers sitting in around that area. So what we've done, considering that we believe we're undervalued based just on our gold projects, we're now in the process of isolating these projects into a new vehicle that we're going to spin out to shareholders. And I think that's a really great way to get more work done on these projects, build a specialized team, and also unlock value for shareholders. Again, we're shareholders in this company that one of the largest, and that's really what motivates us. And so that should be announced and details in the coming several months. So that's going to be, I think, something that people can look forward to. And then, as you mentioned, there'll be the drill plan for next year, and then there's this PA. And I do believe this PA is really going to demonstrate to the market why this project is so unique and the real value upside. And And hopefully that, as part of maybe having institutional research for the first time, will get the attention of some of these institutional type investors. Now, part of the double-edged sword of being a part of a financial group that's been able to finance that, the streets never really gotten involved. Not because we didn't want them to, but it was small programs. In between Agnico and ourselves at PowerOne, we basically were able to put up the capital every year. So we've never had any coverage, sales, trading, marketing. This time, with the market being what it was, we ensured to include several institutions into our fundraising, specifically to be able to leverage their network. And I think I'm hopeful that as the story gets out, people, it'll resonate with them as it has with, the people we've spoken to so far.
Well, look, David, I think there's a lot of food for thought there, and a lot of news coming down the line, which is also pretty cool. But I think we'd probably like to do is kind of maybe do a session with Shawn or any of the teams, kind of understand technically, what this is looking like, and what they're going to be getting after as well, because I think the setup seems good for sure, and say the access to capital has allowed you to get this $23 million in, and you seem to know what you want to do with that. So maybe it's now a case of getting into the weeds a little bit. So I think for today, appreciate your time. Nice introduction, and stay in touch, please.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great idea. I think they can really help demonstrate better than I can what makes this project so successful. And really appreciate your time and your audience. And please stay tuned. We should have a lot more excitement ahead of us here.